Mika, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, Brett. It's really great to be on your platform. Yeah.
Your background in medicine and public
Yeah.
health and philanthropy is incredibly inspiring.
Thank you.
Can you share a little bit about your journey and what drives your passion for healthcare equity?
Yeah. Just to give you a bit of background, I am a medical doctor by training. I graduated as a general practitioner in 2020 from a medical school in Ethiopia. And then I worked for around 4 years in different like health policy, healthcare management related works in private, non-government, and governmental organizations. And then I decided, okay, public health is really where my heart is. And then I came to the States to do my master's in Hopkins. So I have my master's in public health, which I finished in May of 2024. And in 2021, I started a nonprofit organization called GIV Society Ethiopia, which works on providing free medical services for underserved population in Ethiopia. I think for me, what drives health equity for me, or like what inspired me starting from like medical school, is just like really being observant of my environment. I worked or I learned in a tertiary hospital, so we had like a lot of referral patients coming from the rural sides, really last resort cases, really just hard cases to treat, and mostly were like people from really low socioeconomic status. Just seeing that, I realized there's so much work that needs to be done in serving the population that really needs it, the vulnerable population, those with disability, those with from like low income and so on. So I think starting from like my internship years where I was like closely working with patients, I realized it's not just that provide we need to provide clinical services, but we need to provide affordable services, accessible services. Some of my patients had to come traveling 2 days by buses and so on just to get the medical services they needed. So just seeing that made me like really believe, okay, we really need to work on our policies to make sure that it centers on those that really need it, not just those with money or those in the urban settings or so on. So that's why most of my work has been focused on health equity. I would say the one thing would be just observing my environment made me realize what the problem is and also gave me the solution, or like made me realize where the solution lies. When I started my journey, or when I co-founded my nonprofit organization, I've always been about, okay, nonprofit serving others. So I was not someone who focused on my own well-being. It can be like financial, mental, or so on. I've always been like, I think that like, generally people in healthcare are so like giving and caring, and they focus on others. So it took me a while to stop and be like, if I can't help myself, if I cannot take care of myself, either financially, spiritually, economically, and in all the ways that I need to do, I won't be able to serve others. So I think the past years when I started thinking about or my finances, where I should, gear towards and so on. And because of that, now I'm also a bit pivoting into like entrepreneurship. I recently started or like co-founded a digital healthcare startup with a friend that I met during a fellowship. I have a small consultancy. These are like kind of like passive incomes besides the full-time opportunities that I do. So definitely entrepreneurship is something that I'm leaning towards. And then again, other different passive incomes methods. For example, when I was in Ethiopia, I did a bit of modeling on the side because I felt like it was something empowering, especially as a medical professional. You don't really get to see a lot of people doing like fashion or creative stuff. So I was like, this is a good
Mhm.
message for others. And for me also, I get to explore a completely different world. So I used to do like different advertisements, different like brand ambassador dealerships, especially with healthcare providers or like platforms and so on. So I think for me, working on this like passive incomes, working on my entrepreneurship journey besides the nonprofit sector that I really love, which usually nonprofit takes away from you, doesn't really bring in a lot of revenue, or it rewards you and spiritually or like in a way that you're serving community, but it doesn't really add up to your financials usually, at least for my culture. And not just my culture, I think this is worldwide. We're usually told like, okay, you need to be focused on something. Like you can only do one thing. Either you can have a family, or either you can have a career, or you can like it's very like focus on one thing. Like you can't do it all. Or yeah, you might not be able to do it all, but like you can explore a lot of things, and you can be successful in many different things. So it was a chance for me to kind of talk about that. And I'm also very passionate about mental health. So, being in a pageant and having that title of like Miss Ethiopia and so on, you get to appear on like magazines, TV show, on TV and so on. So that was a chance for me to talk about something I'm passionate about, which was mental health at that moment, which I still am, but I've focused a bit differently these days. But yeah, that's how I got into pageants and kind of used my title to do some few projects. Yeah.
That's awesome. Amazing. And how can we pivot these skills that we do have into this idea of growing, focusing on ourselves and growing towards this direction of financial freedom? And in financial freedom, it gives us the ability to do things that we want to do, not things that we have to
Mhm.
do. And that's the passion then that we get to perform in helping others. So what are some skills or traits that you feel up to this point may be aligned best to help you grow in real estate investing?
Yeah. As I was telling you when we started, I don't have a lot of knowledge about real estate, but it's something definitely down the line that I would read about and know more about. But I think having that intention, first of all, is very important. Of like, as I was saying, being like sitting down and saying, okay, right now it might not be something I'm doing. I might not be financially literate or financially independent, but that needs to be a vision I need to offer myself. Okay, down the line, 5 years from now, 3 years from now, we need to plan first, I think, for it to be a priority in our lives. Then that way, I think the people that we connect with, the kind of skills that we're trying to gain, the people that we work with, the jobs that we select, the friendships that we focus on, will all, I think, be more selective and more geared towards that like real estate or stock or like whatever like financial independency mechanism that we're looking into. So I think really being intentional and having a vision for ourselves and maybe like having even milestones and like what people say about like for the stars and shoot for the moon. What was the saying? And then
You think shoot for the stars, and if you end up at the moon,
yeah,
yeah,
so
yeah,
like you
that
might
kind of
not like
thing. Yeah.
achieve that exact goal. Like you might say, okay, I want to have like $1 million by next year, but at least it's better than not saying anything and not making anything. And maybe you'll make like 1/4 of that, or like maybe 1/10 or whatever. But like have a plan, have that intentionality, and have that vision. I think that's what has worked for me. I try to read the magazine at least once a week or something like that. So I try to focus on that. I also try to read books. I'm trying to be consistent, but I have like books on my list that are like specifically about financial literacy, and those that are like specific for women, women of color, that like specifically speak to me. So those are the areas or like the places that I try to look for this information. But yeah, I think I need to do even more work. But yeah, mostly those are the platforms that I get my information from. I don't know why. I always love to ask about mistakes. Because I think the best way to learn is from others' mistakes rather than you making them yourself.
Mm.
Um, so I think I would ask, what are like really common mistakes to the point where sometimes we get really blindsided in like investment or generally even in life. Like it looks just like so common, like a norm or like a common thing to do that you don't even think it's a mistake or like not necessarily a mistake, but like there's a better way to do it than what actually like million people do or something like that. So I think I would definitely ask like, what is like a, a mistake that a lot of people do that if they do it properly or like if they change that small thing can make a significant difference in that journey. Yeah.
The first thing that comes into my mind, if I was that person or had the experience to give
Yeah.
you those answers, I would say nobody's going to care more about your money than you
Hmm.
do. Especially in the healthcare trade or high income career paths, you're going to get a lot of sells. Like people are going to be selling you stuff all the time. Hey, I've got this, or this is my new program, or do this, or do that. Or even in the coat tail investing, my air quotes are going up. Just because somebody else is doing it, you say, oh, it's got to be safe because they're doing it. Nobody's ever, ever, ever going to care more about your money than you do. So making sure you're keeping that focus, doing your due diligence, learn to ask the right questions when it comes to tracking
Mm.
that. There's no such thing as passive income. It's all going to take your time and effort. Just some of those investments are more detached from your time than the
Mm.
others. So that's the biggest thing. Nobody's going to care more about your money than you do. Learn to ask the right questions. Failing fast is another thing that I hear from a lot of people. Given your point in your life, it's better to fail bigger now than it would be fail bigger later. So it's getting up, taking action, get over that analysis paralysis, and sticking to what you're doing, sticking to your guns, sticking to those actions, and caring about your money are big, big things. Surround yourself with the right people, people who have already become who you want to become, not what they do on Instagram or on LinkedIn or on YouTube. You know that person of what they've actually done and what they stand for, what their passions are, and
Yeah.
the impact that they're making.